Someone attacks you, says something cruel, something false, something designed to make you explode. And everyone's watching, waiting for you to snap back, waiting for the fight. But you don't give it to them. You stay silent, and they think they won. But here's what they don't know. Your silence isn't weakness. It's calculation. It's control they'll never have. And the reason you stay quiet when others can't, that's what separates you from everyone who's still losing battles that were never worth fighting. Let's be clear about something. You're not staying silent because you can't argue. You're not quiet because you're afraid. More often than not, you're the one who's least afraid of losing face. And you're definitely not silent because you don't care. You're silent because you've discovered something most people will never understand. That the person who needs to win every argument is actually losing at life. That people who can't tolerate being wrong are trapped in their own ego. That the ones who always need the last word are controlled by everyone who provokes them. You learn to stay silent. And that's made you dangerous in a way loud people will never be. Today we're breaking down exactly why you do this, what it means psychologically, and why people who can't stay silent secretly fear people who can. First, let's talk about what everyone gets wrong. Because when you stay silent in an argument, people make assumptions. They think you have nothing to say. They think you're scared. They think they won. And you let them think that, because you know something they don't. Here's what silence actually is. It's refusing to participate in someone else's circus. It's recognizing that some people argue to win, and you no longer need to win arguments with people whose opinions don't matter. It's understanding that the fastest way to disarm someone looking for a fight is to not fight back. When you stay silent, you're not surrendering. You're withdrawing your energy from a situation that doesn't deserve it. You're choosing not to feed chaos with more chaos. You're protecting something they can't even see, your mental peace. But they interpret it as weakness. Because while they're obsessing over winning the argument, you've already moved on. And that's the real victory they'll never understand. So why do you stay silent when others can't? It starts with pattern recognition. You've been in enough arguments to see that most of them follow the exact same script. Someone says something provocative. You respond with logic. They respond with emotion. You present facts. They move the goalposts. You prove your point. They attack your character. Round and round until everyone's exhausted and nothing has changed. You've watched this pattern play out dozens, maybe hundreds of times. With family, with coworkers, with strangers on the internet. And you realize something. The argument was never about finding truth. It was about ego protection. About someone needing to be right more than they needed to be accurate. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. Every argument becomes predictable. You can see exactly where it's going before it gets there. So you stay silent. Not because you don't have a response, but because you already know how the conversation ends. And it's not worth the trip. What most people don't realize is this. Silence doesn't just look calm. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable for people who rely on emotional dominance. Here's the deeper psychological layer. When someone provokes you, they're not just attacking your ideas. They're testing your status. They want to know, can I move you? Can I control your emotional state? Can I pull you down into reaction? Most people answer that test immediately, with anger, defensiveness, explanations. And the moment they do, the power dynamic is settled. But when you stay silent, something strange happens. The brain expects resistance. It expects friction. It expects noise. And when it doesn't get it, the other person starts to feel exposed. Because now, they're the one talking too much. They're the one revealing emotion. They're the one losing composure. In social psychology, this is called status ambiguity, when no clear hierarchy is established. And humans are deeply uncomfortable with it. Your silence removes the reference point they need to feel superior. That's why people escalate when you don't respond. They repeat themselves. They get louder. They become harsher. Not because you're weak, but because they're losing control of the interaction. Now let's talk about what this requires internally. Staying silent while provoked isn't passive. It requires the ability to hold emotional charge without discharge. Your nervous system still feels the insult. The anger still rises. The response is ready, but you don't release it. That ability to feel without reacting is not common. It's associated with higher executive control, long-term thinking, and delayed gratification. Most adults never develop it. They confuse expression with strength, reaction with honesty, noise with power. But restraint signals something else entirely. That you don't need to prove your position. That your identity isn't under threat. That you're not fighting for dominance in a moment, because you already have it in your life. This is why silence unsettles people more than insults ever could. They can argue with words. They can't argue with absence. And while they're trying to pull a reaction out of you, you're doing something far more important. You're preserving clarity. You're protecting momentum. You're keeping your internal state clean. Because you've learned something most people never do. Peace isn't the reward for winning arguments. It's the prerequisite for winning at life. And here's the strategic advantage nobody talks about. When you stay silent, people reveal themselves. They show you exactly who they are. And you gather information while giving nothing away. Watch what happens when you don't argue back. The other person keeps talking, keeps explaining, keeps justifying. And with every word, they expose their insecurities, their triggers, their weaknesses. They tell you exactly what they're afraid of, exactly what they need to defend. Meanwhile, you've revealed nothing. You've shown no weakness, given them no ammunition. They're shadowboxing while you're taking notes. This is especially powerful in professional settings. The coworker who tries to provoke you in a meeting. The boss who wants to see you lose your cool. The competitor who wants to rattle you. Your silence makes them uncomfortable, makes them wonder what you're thinking, makes them realize they have no power over you. And in personal relationships, your silence in an argument often does more than any words could. It creates space. It lets the other person hear themselves. It allows them to realize, without you saying it, that they might be wrong. You're not avoiding conflict. You're choosing when and how to engage. And that choice, that's strategy. But let's be honest about when silence isn't healthy. Because not all silence is strength. Sometimes it's suppression. Sometimes it's fear. And you need to know the difference. Unhealthy silence is when you stay quiet because you're afraid of confrontation. When you have something important to say, but you swallow it because you can't handle the possibility of conflict. When you let people cross boundaries because speaking up feels too scary. Unhealthy silence is when you're avoiding, not choosing. When you're afraid of being abandoned, rejected, or disliked if you voice your truth. When you're staying quiet to keep the peace, but destroying your peace in the process. That's not power. That's self-abandonment. That's prioritizing other people's comfort over your own needs. And that will eat you alive from the inside. Healthy silence is different. It's a choice, not a compulsion. It comes from strength, not fear. You could argue, but you choose not to. You could defend yourself, but you don't need to. You're not avoiding conflict. You're deciding this particular conflict isn't worth having. The difference isn't how it feels. Healthy silence feels peaceful, empowering, like you're in control. Unhealthy silence feels like swallowing glass, like you're betraying yourself. And you know which one you're doing. Here's what people who argue constantly miss. While they're fighting battles, you're building empires. While they're obsessing over who said what, you're focused on what actually moves your life forward. Every hour spent arguing is an hour not spent creating, not spent learning, not spent building relationships that matter, not spent working toward goals. Chronic arguers are addicted to being right in the moment. You're focused on being successful in the long term. And here's the thing about the long game. It requires emotional discipline. It requires the ability to let small disrespect slide because you're focused on bigger things. It requires not needing immediate validation because you're confident in where you're going. You stay silent in arguments because you've got better things to do. Not because you think you're better than them, but because you have a life you're actively building, and defending your ego to someone who doesn't matter isn't part of that plan. 5 years from now, will that argument have mattered? Will winning that point have changed anything? No, but the time and energy you save by not engaging, that compounds, that builds, that creates the life you actually want. You're playing a different game than they are, and your silence is proof of that. So let's talk about strength, because the world has it backwards. We're taught that standing up for yourself means fighting back, that strength means never backing down, that real power is loud and aggressive and always ready for battle. But that's not strength. That's reactivity. That's being controlled by whoever can push your buttons. That's letting other people decide when you use your energy and where you direct your focus. Real strength is restraint. It's having the power to destroy someone verbally and choosing not to. It's feeling the anger and not being ruled by it. It's being able to sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood and not needing to correct it. The strongest people aren't the ones who never back down. They're the ones who know when to walk away, who can absorb a hit without needing to hit back, who can be insulted without being injured. Your silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous, because you can't be provoked. You can't be controlled. You can't be baited into wasting your energy on things that don't matter. And the people who mistake your silence for weakness, they're the same people who would crumble under the level of self-control you exercise every day. They have no idea how strong you actually are, and you don't need them to know. If you're someone who stays silent instead of arguing, hear this. You're not missing out on anything. You're not letting people win. You're not being weak. You're being wise. You're choosing peace over pride, strategy over ego, long-term success over short-term validation. And the people who can't understand that, they're still trapped in a game you stopped playing years ago. They're still fighting for scraps of validation while you're building something real.